Back-to-back, 6 in the last 9 seasons, another ring for women's gymnastics. Their win ahead.
It's a windy day in Oklahoma. Find out what's in store for this week coming up next.
And wildfires force evacuations just north of Oklahoma City. We have the latest. This is OU Nightly.
Thanks for watching OU Nightly. I'm Sydney Wallace.
And I'm Jimmy Wicks. We begin tonight with breaking news. A wildfire just north of Oklahoma City is forcing evacuations.
The fire is near Waterloo Road and west of North Post Road.
You can see in this video from our partners at Nose 9, smoke has filled the area.
Firefighters from Edmond, Woodcrest, Oklahoma City, and Tinker Air Force Base are on scene.
We do know that some buildings have burned in this fire, but it is not clear if they are homes or outbuildings.
And the OU Nightly weather team is tracking the wildfire danger today.
Let's get right over to meteorologist Andrew Messersmith. Andrew?
Yeah, we've been following this all day today. Conditions are conducive for fires. Right now, temperatures a little bit warm in the 70s and lower 80s for the OKC metro area. And you can see those winds really whipping out of the south. And looking at the whole state, really the whole state are in similar conditions to these. And really, it's the dew points that's the main story today, in the 40s and in the 30s, causing some of that fire danger. We've got Carlin outside right now in Norman. Carlin, what's it looking like out there here?
Thanks, Andrew. It is a beautiful day here in Norman across campus. The sun is out, we've got blue skies, but we're also windy. I'm sure you can see outside the wind is blowing, and as you're walking to class, I'm sure you've noticed it as well. But here in Norman, our winds are gusting of up to 30 miles per hour, so that's something that is also contributing to that fire danger risk here in central Oklahoma. And while we're very glad we haven't had any fires here in Norman yet, we do want to stay safe and keep that in mind as the rest of the day goes on and into the rest of the week. Be sure to keep that in mind. But back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Carlin. It looks like a really nice day outside, albeit there is quite a bit of wind coming this way. Now, for the rest of our show, we are going to talk about this elevated fire danger today. This is for the entire state of Oklahoma, including the OKC metro area. And we're also looking at a midweek severe chance for your Wednesday afternoon and evening, and then a little bit of a cool down this weekend. Jimmy?
Thanks, Andrew. Today, citizens of McCurtain County in southeast Oklahoma are protesting comments made by their county sheriff and county commissioner. An audio recorded taken by a local reporter includes talks of killing, beating, and burying 2 local newspaper reporters. OU Nightly's Olivia Day has been following the story, warning this story may be sensitive for some viewers. Olivia?
Jimmy, when McCurtain County reporter and publisher Bruce Willingham left his tape reporter behind, he hoped to catch the commissioner's office holding secret meetings. Now, his suspicions were confirmed, but as he kept listening to the recording, what he heard much, much worse. Threats to beat, kill, and bury him and his son.
Don't say this, you know.
What goes around goes around.
It will. I told you it will.
Yeah.
I know where 2 big deep holes are if you ever need them.
I got an excavator.
These are pre-dug.
Those 2 deep holes for journalists Bruce Willingham and his son, Chris. Both work for newspaper McCurtain County Gazette. The individuals involved, Sheriff Kevin Clardy, Commissioner Mark Jennings, as well as the sheriff's investigator and jail administrator. The 4 were also caught discussing hiring hitmen for the 2 reporters.
I've known 2 or 3 hitmen that are very quiet guys.
Yeah.
And would cut no mercy.
Yeah.
In Louisiana. Because it's all mafia around Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce Willingham told News 9 he thinks the sheriff and the staff were upset about unfavorable coverage of Eagletown residents who hogtied a man last year for burglarizing a local dispensary. McCurtain County Police tasered the man while hogtied. He later died. In addition, social media was fired up about the sheriff and commissioner reminiscing on lynching and hanging of black men.
Well, it's not like that no more.
I know. Take them down here on Mud Creek and hang them up on the road.
Yeah.
But you can't
And
do
the
that.
thing about it is,
They got more rights than we got.
Bruce Willingham has sent these recordings to the FBI and the Oklahoma Attorney General's office. The FBI has launched a formal investigation. We did reach out to the McCurtain County Sheriff's Office. They told us they have no comment at this time. Reporting from the newsroom, Olivia Daig, OU Nightly.
Thanks, Olivia. Governor Kevin Stitt releasing a statement calling for resignation of Sheriff Clardy and Commissioner Jennings, as well as several other McLean County officials. The governor says, quote, "I am both appalled and disheartened to hear the horrid comments made by officials in McCurtain County. I will not stand idly while this takes place," end quote.
A 16-year-old boy was shot and seriously wounded by an 80-year-old man in Kansas City, Missouri. Ralph Jarl was picking up his siblings at an address given to him by his parents, but he accidentally went to a home with a similar address. When Jarl arrived and knocked on the door, the homeowner shot him twice. The shooter was taken into custody and released 24 hours after the arrest. Pending further investigations, civil rights attorney Lee Merritt and Benjamin Crump are representing the victim and his family, demanding swift action, and are calling the shooting horrendous and unjustifiable.
He is alive. He is healing. So I just want to tell you thank you for being here, because my nephew is alive.
Civil rights attorney Lee Merritt and Benjamin Crump are representing the victim and are demanding swift action and are calling the shooting horrendous and unjustifiable.
Moments before a man is killed, police discuss if they're at the right house. OU Nightly's Becky Llanes joins us with this story out of New Mexico and more from the News Center.
That's right. 3 New Mexico police officers are now on paid administrative leave after shooting and killing a man at the wrong house. The police chief said the officers were responding to a domestic violence call, but were at the wrong address. The homeowner, 52-year-old Robert Dotson, reportedly answered the door armed with a handgun. That's when officers fired their weapons, and the DA's office will determine if the shooting was justified. And in New York City, 2 people have been arrested. They are accused of establishing a secret police station on behalf of the Chinese government. The Justice Department says the police station aimed to crack down on pro-democracy activists and people who are critical of China's policies. And in Texas, a substitute teacher has been fired after allegedly organizing a fight between students. The school district says the teacher encouraged fights, outlined rules for the kids to fight by, and even had a student monitor the classroom door while fights took place. The school district says that it has worked with the school for a few months. Sydney, Jimmy.
One of the biggest events of the spring semester is this weekend.
We're taking Money Matters outside for a sneak peek. Morgan?
A big weekend in Norman for fans and visitors. Spring game is up ahead, and it's going to bring thousands of dollars and fans to Norman.
Evening tornadoes tear through Oklahoma.
We have a tornado warning for Cleveland County.
The OU Nightly weather team was there before.
45 minutes away or less from these storms getting into campus.
During.
Plenty of people who, are living off campus. This storm is headed to you.
And after.
Again, sending news crews out to assess damage.
Always keeping the University of Oklahoma in focus.
Campus in the clear right now.
OU Nightly weather, your campus weather authority.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those barbecues you plan in detail for your family? Or your daughter's first costume party? It was out of this world. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
Did you know that items like paint, cleaning solutions, pesticides, solvents, and other chemicals are considered household hazardous waste? These chemicals are dangerous to our environment and water quality when they are dumped in our storm drains or gutters. Fortunately, the City of Norman has a dedicated household hazardous waste facility where you can properly dispose of these items. Call 405-366-5463 to make an appointment. For more information, visit bit.ly/Norman Stormwater.
The spring game is around the corner, and that means big business for Norman. Morgan Martin has more on the economic impact in today's Money Matters. Morgan?
It's time for the spring game, and for many local businesses, the hustle and bustle starts this Thursday.
You never know when the visitor to the spring game, it's going to be their first time to Norman, and so
Dan Skim with Visit Norman is getting local businesses ready for the busy weekend.
anything outside the lines, whether that's letting our restaurants know things are happening, get your specials ready, be ready to show all of our fans a good time.
Businesses are expecting a larger turnout than years past. According to OU Athletics, spring game attendance jumped from the usual 40,000 fans to over 70,000 this last year. And for consumers heading to Norman, Skim says when you get your receipt, you'll see a guest tax.
All the amazing festivals and art walks and things that we love doing, that's funded with all of these visitors' dollars.
50% goes straight to Visit Norman for marketing. The other 50% split between the Arts Council and Norman Parks and Recs. And for those staying at the new Noun Hotel, you can expect to see that charge.
As soon as the spring game was announced, our phone just started ringing off the hook with people trying to make reservations.
Crystal Ross, sales manager for the Noun, says they're expecting a full house for their first spring game.
So we're kind of the place to be during that weekend.
But while hotels and boutiques are expecting a large turnout this weekend, Visit Norman says they're seeing more and more people.
We actually, we have been blessed that we have some of the best women's athletes in the country. And
Visit Norman says the turnout every weekend right now is a lot. They say other teams drawing in a big crowd, softball and women's gymnastics. From outside the Memorial Stadium, Morgan Martin, OU Nightly.
Well, I know I absolutely can't wait for the spring game this weekend.
I mean, especially after last year. I mean, it was dang near a sellout, 70,000 people. I know I'm going, but a new student-run magazine has taken to campus.
How this magazine is hoping to give more people a voice at OU. And coming up, OU Nightly meteorologist Andrew Messersmith has your weekly forecast. Andrew?
That's right. We're going to talk about the upcoming severe weather potential, so stick around.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
The central and midwestern U.S. averages more than 850 tornadoes each year, and lately, the number of floods has been rising in the region too. So chances are, there will be more twisters and floods near here again. And between school, sports, and social lives, chances are, you won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids has all the educational tools and information to make the conversation easy. When the time comes, chances are they'll feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
Evening tornadoes tear through Oklahoma.
We have a tornado warning for Cleveland County.
The OU Nightly weather team was there before.
45 minutes away or less from these storms getting into campus.
During.
Plenty of people who, are living off campus. This storm is headed to you.
And after.
Again, sending news crews out to assess damage.
Always keeping the University of Oklahoma in focus.
Campus in the clear right now.
OU Nightly weather. Or Campus Weather Authority.
Welcome back to OU Nightly. Right now, we are taking a look at our current wind gusts that have been fueling these fires up here in OKC. That's up there in Dakota County. Right now, we are seeing temperatures right now 79 degrees in Norman, 80 across most of the metro area. And as we zoom out, once again, looking at those current temperatures here. But we do have the current wind gusts that are, sorry, we're having a little bit of problems with our graphics here. All right, we're back. All right, so current wind gusts reaching above 35 miles an hour here in western Oklahoma, 25 for the OKC metro area, and that is fueling, I know my allergies have been really bad the last couple of days. Tree pollen is at a high, grass pollen is at a medium. I've seen a lot of people mowing their lawns, and that has really caused those allergies to be bad. And the wind is not helping anything allergy-wise, that's for sure, and of course fire-wise. And this is the future wind gusts. This is for tomorrow morning. We're still looking at almost 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts here in Oklahoma. Even in Oklahoma, that's windy. And all right, so that's going to push out, though, as we head into Wednesday with our next storm potential, which we'll talk about here in a second. But first, here's our fire danger forecast. The red is high, that pink is extreme, and we have had fire reports here in the red. We're going to see a lot more moisture, so you might be thinking, well, we're going to see those strong winds continue and even increase, but that moisture is going to help to keep things in the green for the next couple of days. That being said, do be careful if you're out there in the metro area this evening. Now, we do have a marginal risk for severe weather. This is on Wednesday. Norman's in this risk, and it's a conditional risk, once again, meaning we're going to be looking at that cap, the capping inversion. We'll talk about that. But here we go. Here's this Gulf moisture that's coming up from the south here. This is Wednesday afternoon. We're going to have plenty of moisture this time around. It is going to feel very humid. And here's that low pressure system that's going to help create that forcing, help create our thunderstorms for Oklahoma. Now here's a one model run. This is going to change quite a bit over the next couple of days, but I do want to show you just this one model run. We have a couple of cells that fire around 5 p.m. and then push off to the east. And once again, this is going to change a lot, but you can kind of get an idea of what's going to happen for the mid-afternoon time frame. Now, what is a cap? Well, it's when you have warmer air above the surface where you have cooler air at the surface. And this means that the air rises and then can't rise above the warmer air. So we need some forcing to really get rid of that cap and bring us severe weather. But like I mentioned, here is all of that moisture that's really going to fuel those thunderstorms. And our highs tomorrow, it's going to be very nice. It's going to be in the 70s and 80s. So here's a look at the rest of your week. It's going to be 70s and 80s through Wednesday before we cool off a little bit into the weekend. We're going to see temperatures getting down into the 30s overnight and highs in the 60s.
Well, that absolutely sounds like beautiful weather. I absolutely can't wait.
Right. I know me and you are golfers. Crazy wind. When is the best day to go?
Well, it's going to be windy Tuesday and Wednesday, but Thursday is looking really good for golf. But don't forget your sunscreen. I got burnt this weekend.
I also got burnt right on the neck. I am red as a lobster right now. So
I'm sunscreened up all the time. Always have it with me. And graduation season is coming up on campus, and that means end-of-year festivities are coming up too.
The 2023 Class Council for the University of Oklahoma is hosting a senior picnic for those graduating this spring. However, it's not just your normal picnic.
Essentially, we are going to have dining options as well as crafts for students to participate in, and we will also have raffle drawings, giveaways, and free gifts for every senior that shows up.
The picnic is an opportunity for everyone to honor the achievements of the senior class.
The celebration will be on the South Oval Thursday, April 20th from noon until 4 p.m. And coming up in sports, hear how one OU alum made history following his tremendous season.
And not one, but two Sooner sports went back-to-back over the weekend. Pierce Leffelholtz has more in sports.
That's right. There's been a huge splash in the NFL this offseason, and some Sooner sports need to make some room in their trophy cases. Sports is next.
Hello. Do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Did you know that items like paint, cleaning solutions, pesticides, solvents, and other chemicals are considered household hazardous waste? These chemicals are dangerous to our environment and water quality when they are dumped in our storm drains or gutters. Fortunately, the City of Norman has a dedicated household hazardous waste facility where you can properly dispose of these items. Call 405-366-5463 to make an appointment. For more information, visit bit.ly/Norman Stormwater.
Meet the Scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Hello, I'm Pierce Levelholtz, and it's time for sports. There's a new highest paid player in the NFL, and he's a Sooner. Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles have agreed to a record-breaking contract after making the Super Bowl last season. Hurts' deal carries a $255 million pay grade with $179 million guaranteed. He is now the highest paid player in NFL history, averaging $51 million each season. Oklahoma women's gymnastics went back-to-back for their 6th national championship. The Sooners have now won 2 in a row, 3 of their last 4, and 6 of the last 9. Gymnasts Jordan Bowers and Olivia Troutman spoke on their experience in Fort Worth.
Yes, we rallied together and we just said we know what we have and we're all just going to come together and do our best gymnastics, and that's exactly what we did.
Every moment is just so special, and I wouldn't be able to do it without my trainers, my team, my coaches, my family and friends. So I'm just here to celebrate with my team and just give it all I got, every last ounce of it, and I'm just excited to be here.
Oklahoma men's gymnastics also competed for a national title over the weekend and finished 4th. Zach Nunez, Ignacio Yakers, Emre Dedanley, and Jack Freeman received All-American honors to close out the season. Sooner men's gymnastics has now finished in the top 4 in each NCAA championship since 2000. And the Oklahoma City Thunder season came to a close after their play-in loss to Minnesota on Saturday. OU Nightly's Emily Faith was there for the Thunder's reception back in Oklahoma City. Emily?
Yeah, that's right, Pierce. After an overachieving season for the Oklahoma City Thunder, fans lined up at Will Rogers Airport to welcome their team back home.
Thunder fans never fail to bring electric energy to the Paycom Center, but early Saturday morning, Thunder fans brought that energy to the Will Rogers Airport to show love for their home team.
I just love the Thunder and got to represent for the team and everything they do for us, and so just got to represent.
Cheers and chants from Thunder fans filled the airfield as Thunder players stepped off of the plane and back onto Oklahoma soil.
I think that it just really kind of it speaks volumes that the fans out here want to be out here at 2 and 3 in the morning to welcome our team back. But I think that's really what has become kind of a tradition in Oklahoma City, and I just really enjoy that.
This tradition has been around for years in OKC, and no matter the time of day, Thunder fans are always ready to show off their Thunder pride. Pierce, back to you.
Thanks, Emily. The 16th ranked OU women's tennis team traveled to Kansas for their final regular season match, and they brought back some extra hardware. The Sooners took down the 22nd ranked Kansas Jayhawks for back-to-back Big 12 regular season titles. OU will travel back to Kansas for the Big 12 championship starting Thursday. Sydney, Jimmy, back to you.
Thanks, Pierce. And do you like to relax in a yoga class?
I do, but I don't go as often as I should. But hear about one place in Norman adding a twist to a normal yoga class. Coming up.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Did you know that trash, like plastic bottles and fast food wrappers, can carry germs and bacteria? When these items are tossed in the street, they eventually find their way to a river or lake and have a negative impact on aquatic life. Keep our waters clean by putting your trash in the bin. For more information, visit bit.ly/Norman Stormwater.
The family's visit to the forest inspired a beautiful question. Mother, mother, am I a tree? You tell me to stand tall. You tell me to stay rooted. I think I am a tree. My child, of course you are. But what kind of tree will you be? The kind to hug or the kind to climb? Doesn't matter what you choose, so long as you choose to be a tree that's kind.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
I'm Emery Johnson at the OU Nightly Update Desk with breaking news. Firefighters continue battling a massive grass fire in Logan County near Arcadia. In this video from News 9, that blaze near Waterloo and Post already forcing residents to evacuate from their homes. Officials say the fire has been burning for more than an hour and picked back up because of the wind. Sydney, Jimmy.
Thanks, Emery. You've heard of goat yoga. Well, now there's alpaca yoga, and the Well in Norman is just one of those places partaking in the fun.
Cat to cow pose meets humming alpacas, and they just run around the room and eat carrots out of your hands.
The alpacas will even lay down and relax with you.
Well, I would definitely love to go see some alpaca yoga and even participate. Sounds like a blast.
I definitely have to try it out, but let's pass it over to OU Nightly meteorologist Andrew Messersmith for one more check at the last weather.
I'd love to relax with some alpacas as well, but you know, I've just got to settle for the pool, I guess, out here this evening. It's going to be a perfect pool evening. You know, my apartment complex has a great pool, but there's a couple of geese that have decided to make a home there, unfortunately. But if your pool has no geese in there, we've got beautiful temperatures today. Moderate winds, but nothing that you haven't seen already here in Oklahoma. Temperature is getting down to 70 by 9 p.m. And then once again, here's a look at your 7-day forecast. We're seeing warmer temperatures Wednesday with those chance of showers and thunderstorms in the evening. And then as we head into the weekend, those temperatures will cool off as we head into Earth Day, which is Saturday. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Andrew, and thank you for watching OU Nightly. I'm Jimmy Wicks.
And I'm Sydney Wallace. Be sure to watch OU Nightly live weekdays at 4:30. Good night.
Prepared as your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane. You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking,
let's go.
You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
To share shared experience and share that awareness. It's understanding that the science that's telling us how we are changing and influencing the world has solid mathematical and solid mathematical base. And then you see the effects of it and you just interiorize it. You make it your own experience. And I think that that's what happened. That's why astronauts develop that awareness of and the desire to help the environment somehow in any way they can.
Wherever, however, whenever. We're here, there. We're everywhere. NASA Space Communications and Navigation. Exploration enabled.
Alright, good morning everybody. Roll call, got the pilot, got the co-pilot, GEOC operator, mission director. Alright, flight mission crew, FCIFs are complete, and flight currencies are all checked. Crew schedule has been published. We're NASA 872. Engine start expecting 0600, estimated landing of 07 tomorrow morning. So the mission duration is approximately 24.
All right, thanks everybody.
I didn't ignore your email. First number.
Hawks are strong, powerful birds capable of flying thousands of miles each year. Some species undertake long migrational journeys, a testimony to their strength and stamina. Our bird will fly over 10,000 nautical miles and will reach an altitude of 65,000 feet.
The preparation for an HRX flight starts a couple of days before the flight, where we get together and look at the meteorological forecasts and decide where to send the aircraft.
Those targets are determined by the circulation of the atmosphere, which varies from day to day.
And so we design a flight based on meteorological data to go down and sample in near the tropical tropopause, so what altitude to sample, also what latitude and longitude to sample.
We're looking at all the areas where the scientists want to fly, and we coordinate those areas with the Federal Aviation Administration.
We work with the scientists beginning at that time to come up with options and a plan to get them what they need. We try and maximize the time that we spend in the air.
For this experiment, we're focused on regions where temperatures are cold because we're interested in high altitude clouds. These clouds are about 10 miles or 16 kilometers above the surface.
When all the instruments are ready for flight and everything's been checked out and the aircraft's been checked out, and we button up all the hatches and we're ready for flight.
24 wind comms, altimeter 2984.
Once everything is ready in the control room, we give the okay for engine start.
Ground control panel, secure the aircraft is yours.
So we're ready for aircraft taxi.
Copy, inward.
Center line, 22 left.
Roger. And Trapper, can I get a takeoff report?
Yes, sir. Runway's clear. You're going for takeoff.
Roger that.
40 knots. 80 knots.
Takeoff. Ready now.
Payload admission, this is data, KUSI.
We fly it with a mouse and keyboard, and it's more like flying an airline that's always on autopilot.
Well, with the Global Hawk, we have these same controls, only we're just on the ground, and the aircraft could be several thousand miles away. Rather than pointing the nose in any given direction or setting a throttle for a particular power setting, we just tell the aircraft, go to this heading, go to this altitude, go to this airspeed. The system itself decides on the best way to get there. And one of our challenges is to kind of understand the contingency state that the aircraft is in and make sure we understand what the aircraft is doing, and that's what we truly want the aircraft to do. Most of the time the aircraft is flying in what we call a cruise climb mode. It's actually full throttle in a climb. It gets up to a maximum altitude and then it has to wait to burn fuel off, and as the aircraft gets lighter, it goes a little bit higher and a little bit higher, up to a maximum ceiling of about 65,000 feet.
Coming easy left. Roger, release and then turn.
One of the things we do during these flights is we have a meteorological team, a team of forecasters down the hall who are watching the satellite products and telling us where thunderstorms are, for example.
There might be colder temperatures south of Hawaii versus just off the coast of South America or Central America. So we have to know where to direct the plane. So we look very carefully at the meteorological situation first. Then when they're in the air and you're flying along, oftentimes these forecasts are wrong.
So when the atmospheric conditions change during the flight, when we're out over the ocean, a lot of times there's a request for us to change our flight track. Maybe the area that they're interested in is in a different area. So one of the things that we will do is coordinate that flight change.
We will use the information we're collecting as we fly along to redirect the plane.
If you'll notice up on that forward deck of the airplane, there's a big white 48-inch dish. That's a KU, a commercial KU SATCOM dish, and that is constantly pointing at the satellite that we have subscribed to for the missions.
We actually get extensive data transmission from what the instruments are measuring in flight.
We decide based on what we see to send the aircraft somewhere else or to have it go down to different altitudes.
The classic case, as I said, is you look down, you see a cloud on the LiDAR, and you say, we're going to turn around, descend into that cloud, and sample it.
So we'll profile down through these thin clouds, making measurements of not only water vapor, but the temperature and the pressure, and a range of other gases, including ozone, chlorofluorocarbons, and so forth, so that we can understand the movement of air and the behavior of the air in that layer as we dive down.
One of the great things about this is being that our ground station is building based and we have all of the scientists in the back room. We always fly with two pilots. This gives us the opportunity for one pilot, the mission commander, to get up, go to the back room, leave the other guy to monitor the airplane, and we can talk with any one of the particular scientists, whoever has the most important data that they want to get at that particular time, and we can work directly with that scientist, sit right down at the table with him or her, and decide what's the best way to get them what they want and still meet everybody else's needs.
Obviously, the pilots fly the plane. They're the ones who are talking to ground control, but the pilot has to know where to go, and that's where the scientist's role comes in. The scientist will pick the targets and direct the plane towards the appropriate targets, both before we fly and while we're flying.
It's quite a process because sometimes it can mean a major shift in the flight track. So we will look at what they have proposed and provide some feedback, and then we have to talk to air traffic control to make sure that what we're proposing is okay with them. So we'll change the flight track sometimes many times during a flight.
And so that's how we coordinate between the flight operations team and the payload operations team. So it's a very close collaboration during a flight between both groups.
Very interesting for me too, because coming from a platform where we would just have instruments loaded on the plane and we just go fly a mission, we get real-time interaction with the scientists, and I've learned a whole lot just in the few years I've been doing this on what's going on in the back end of the airplane. Very exciting and very interesting.
872 is coming right, not bad. 30 seconds.
Well, what next and what's important to do?
We hope that ATREX will improve our understanding of this part of the atmosphere, but ultimately ATREX will raise some additional questions as well.
We have a lot of work to go, and we hope that doing ATREX with multiple missions, different times of year, in different parts of, mostly over the Pacific, but into the Indian Ocean, to fully understand the range of conditions that we'll see, that models have to consider all of those ranges of conditions in order to understand the climate system properly.
We need to develop some more instruments and fly them on Global Hawk and other high altitude aircraft to make measurements there as well.
Emily Dickinson once wrote, "The brain is wider than the sky." Many questions have been addressed along the way, and new ones have surfaced. We'll keep searching, for the answer is in the air. Carl Sagan once defined the Earth as the pale blue dot. "70% of its surface is covered by water." Life on our planet began in the oceans some 3.5 billion years ago. Since then, water has been an essential component for us. In fact, 2/3 of our bodies are made out of water. We can't imagine life without it. As far as we know, without the presence of liquid water, life is not possible at all. Water is all around us. It's not only in our oceans, but we also find it in rivers, lakes, ice, rain, clouds, even in the air we breathe in, as it's continuously evaporating into the atmosphere.
Water is important for all life. We wouldn't have life on this planet if there wasn't water. When astronomers try to think about other planets and whether they have life on it, the first question to ask is there liquid water?
We have liquid water covering nearly the entire planet, 70% of the planet covered by water. There's water in our atmosphere, in the air, all around us. You don't find any place, any chunk of air in the atmosphere that doesn't have some water molecules or some ice particles or some water droplets in it.
Without water as part of the climate system, we would have wild temperature swings in our atmosphere that would probably make any planet uninhabitable. So water is a key driver.
So water is everywhere. Now, the way water begins, of course, it's a liquid out here, and the sun beats down on the surface and it warms the water. It evaporates it. Just like on your stove, you put your pot of water and your heating element below it heats it up and it boils off. You get steam or you get water vapor. Same way that the sun's energy will warm and evaporate water. That water rises in our atmosphere, and as it rises, temperatures are cooler aloft, and so you form clouds. Clouds are water particles. They're little liquid water particles. Some are very tiny, and they float around as clouds. They can also freeze and form ice particles, and those ice particles float around. Those are also clouds. As the atmosphere moves that water vapor around and those cloud droplets, they fall out of the sky and they come down on the surface and they feed our lakes and our streams. They make the soil wet so that crops can grow. Water is really a fundamental part of our planet. It goes back to the oceans, and then it goes through this cycle again. So you get this constant heating up of liquid water, becomes a gas, it precipitates out onto the land, and it drives this, what we call the hydrological cycle.
So as water comes into the atmosphere, it has a number of effects. So it helps to make clouds, it helps to make rain, but water is actually a very important greenhouse gas.
Also, water carries energy with it. It takes a lot of energy to evaporate water. And then when water forms cloud droplets, it releases energy. So water is a big component of not only the hydrological cycle, the movement of water, but the energy cycle of the planet also, because it's a greenhouse gas and because when you evaporate water, it carries a lot of energy.
So the way it works is when we change the atmosphere, put more carbon dioxide in it, it gets warmer, and that allows the atmosphere to hold more water. The water is also a greenhouse gas, so that increases the temperature further, so it's a feedback effect.
Water, being a strong greenhouse gas, will actually amplify the greenhouse gas effect from these other longer-lived species like carbon dioxide and methane. So that's a very strong positive feedback loop which would keep driving the temperature up.
Or you could create more clouds and reflect more energy back to space, which is what we call a negative feedback.
So we have this complicated interaction between the positive feedbacks from the water vapor itself versus the clouds that it forms, giving you a negative feedback. And finding that right balance, that's part of what we're trying to understand with the entire hydrological cycle in the tropical part of the atmosphere.
And it turns out about half of the change in temperature of the atmosphere right now and the change predicted in the future associated with the increasing carbon dioxide is caused by this water vapor feedback.
Water comes and goes, and that's driven purely by the physics of how water works. It's a reactionary greenhouse gas as opposed to a longer-lived stable greenhouse gas. But water's the big player in the entire feedback loops of how the atmosphere works.
So it's very warm here in the tropics, and it's very moist. And so the air down near the surface has a lot of energy in it.
So deep convection in the form of thunderstorms and typhoons actually are more energetic. They go to higher altitudes.
And so it can go quite high. We see these big thunderstorms that develop, and that's this air being funneled up, just like a boiling pot of water. The air gets funneled up into the upper troposphere here and actually go very high.
And so that extends the troposphere upward to higher altitudes, and the temperature keeps decreasing as you go up, and so it's colder.
And so eventually, most of the water gets frozen out as you get up to these altitudes of 50, 60,000 feet. So it's incredibly dry, even though down at the surface in the tropics, it's very wet and moist. It's very high humidity, it's damp. When you get to 55,000 feet, about 16 kilometers up, it's incredibly dry.
You still get some water making it up to the tropical tropopause, and there the atmospheric motions transport air into the stratosphere. So air is transported into the stratosphere with a small amount of water that's left behind, and that's controlled by the temperatures at the tropical tropopause. So if the tropopause is colder, less water will make it into the stratosphere. If it's somewhat warmer, more water will make it into the stratosphere.
Above us, up at 40, 50,000 feet in the tropics, the atmosphere is going to warm up through this century. And because of that, there will be less freeze drying of this air going up. And so the thinking is that water might go up. Now, water is a powerful greenhouse gas, so if water increases at those higher altitudes, it will act to trap more energy at the surface. So it could cause the temperature to actually go up higher.
Climate change will have huge impacts on food supply, on ocean levels and flooding of coastal regions.
It's important to understand, put all of this together to understand how water will change through the next century.
The more we understand the processes, the better off society will be because of it.
ATREX, when studying the tropical tropopause, is addressing a key uncertainty in our ability to predict future changes in climate in response to human influences.
It is believed that Guam was first discovered by seafaring people who migrated from Southeast Asia around 2000 BC. When Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan arrived at the island in the 16th century, he found a highly stratified society, experts in the art of sailing and skilled craftspeople, the Chamorro. Since then, numerous expeditions have investigated this region of the Pacific, yet there are still many discoveries to be made and places to be explored. Although this time we'll be looking up, way up into the sky.
Attention on deck, engine start on my mark.
Box number 7324. NASA 872. 872.
Here, copies, thanks.
My land cover career really started in 2002 with biggest wildfire in Oregon's history, and that was the Biscuit wildfire. I, at the time, was doing botany surveys and looking for rare plants or rare mushrooms, and so I was spending a lot of time out on the forest looking at and taking photos and doing the documentation that a scientist or a land manager does. When that fire happened, it changed everything, because we all had to react to this fire that was burning up some of the places that I'd literally been the day before. And it was mapping what was there and what was under threat, but it was also mapping the effects of the fire. We needed to find a way to look across 500,000 acres. And the only way that we could really do that was satellite data. If we can't get out and actually measure every single thing, what are we missing? And that's where citizen scientists can actually come in and really help traditional scientists to better understand what is happening around them, but also fill in these gaps.
The Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment program is an international science and education program. It provides students and the public with the opportunity to participate in data collection and the scientific process. The Globe Observer app is one of these opportunities, allowing citizen scientists and students to take land cover observations around the world and submit them to a larger database. But what exactly is land cover? Dr. Eric Brown de Colston of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center explains.
Land cover is really the basic form of the landscape that we have around us. So whether it's a forest or a desert, but it's really one of the components of the landscape that we can study from space.
Dr. Peter Nelson is a scientist who uses land cover imagery in his research.
I am a remote sensing scientist who studies land cover across the globe. I use satellite imagery to make maps of land cover and try to quantify what covers the Earth. Sometimes a satellite can't see what's happening underneath a tree canopy or what's happening underneath cloud cover. And so we really need people to go out there and to take these photos, to do these observations, to help fill in where a satellite can't actually make some observations.
Just like any digital photograph, land cover images are made up of a series of pixels to show what covers the Earth. A pixel, or picture elements, is the smallest unit of a digital image. When combined with thousands of other pixels, a picture is formed. Each pixel color shown represents a land cover type. It's from these pixels where ground verification or ground truthing come into play. You see, depending on what satellite is taking images, a pixel can cover roughly an area of 30 to 500 meters squared. For imagery captured by Landsat, a pixel is 30 meters squared, or about the size of a baseball diamond. However, part of that pixel showing forest might actually be water, or shrubs. By taking land cover observations, citizen scientists can help answer these questions when it comes to land cover maps. So, why are these land cover observations so important? Why are they taken in the first place?
We also are looking at how these components are changing over time. So deforestation in the Amazon or across the world, how are cities expanding? A lot of different things to study, and really the view from space is the way that we do it here at NASA. We have big supercomputers that simulate the physics of the atmosphere and the land, the interaction between the Earth systems. It's important to have that, that land cover map. It sets certain parameters. Those models can actually be used to look at current day conditions and weather. So based on these current conditions, what might the Earth look like 50 or 100 years from now? There's an element of understanding, but then also being able to predict into the future, what that might be like, what these changes may mean for us.
Each point shown here represents a real-world measurement of environmental conditions. Scientists use computer models to fill in information where measurements may not exist. By verifying the satellite imagery and using the data for these models, scientists can predict changes in our environment more accurately. One of these scientists using land cover maps to track urbanization as part of her work is Dr. Amita Mehta of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center.
So urbanization changes terrain as well as characteristics of the surface itself. And so impervious surface is what we look at when we are monitoring flooding. When there are, say, parking lots or cement and concrete surfaces, they increase. So previously, if it was a farmland or something which was not built, and if that is built now, that water previously that could go or percolate in the soil and in the ground now cannot go in, and it stays there. Monitoring helps you to plan for it. If you see land cover changing, even then you know that how water is going to flow in that region might change. If you have to send rescue out or you have to plan for relief activities, then if you know land cover, then you know where there might be help needed.
By using land cover maps and models that reflect changes over time, scientists can predict where flooding and other events may occur. With a changing climate, these predictions from models and land cover maps can help scientists better understand these changes and help communities prepare for them. But perhaps a more important reason as to why I take land cover observations is you get to participate in a community of scientists, citizen scientists, and students.
So it's a very important component that the citizen science and students of the GLOBE program and Globe Observer can contribute to is by really giving us the information on the ground of what they're seeing around them and in front of them. And we hope over time as well how maybe some of these things are changing, because those would be very valuable for science.
I saw the value of having information before a hazard happens, because once that fire went through an area, we can never recreate that data. This is all important for us to share and put together, because That's how we understand Earth as a system. All of these things end up affecting where we live, why we live where we do, and why we make some of the choices that we do.
To learn more about Globe Observer, check out the website at observer.globe.gov and download the app to start taking your own observations today.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for main engine start. 0 and lift off.
These are not the best of conditions, but for these knights of the highway, hauling a multi-million-dollar spacecraft more than 800 miles is all in a day's work. They're carrying NASA's next planet hunter, TESS. TESS stands for Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. Its job is to search for habitable planets outside our solar system, but close enough to study. That's because we're not just looking for planets, we're looking for life. And the first leg of this spacecraft's journey to orbit is the ride to NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
So we left yesterday at Dulles. We left at 10:15 in the morning. We ran into an accident on 95, horrible weather, rain, down through Richmond.
The 16-hour road trip from Virginia to Florida wasn't easy, and protecting this one-of-a-kind spacecraft during its move was vital. Its shipping container is designed to keep TESS safe on the road.
The case gets used for a number of missions. It's mounted on some shock-absorbing bumpers so that we don't see a lot of the road noise getting into the spacecraft while we transit. We don't want any humidity inside. We don't want the temperature to change, so we have an air conditioning system as well. So we're just trying to keep it environmentally stable on the trip. And then we have very sensitive science instruments. So we actually provide a nitrogen purge. We spray nitrogen gas in to make sure that no air gets in contact with some of the sensitive components.
TESS has safely made it to Kennedy, where it is immediately taken to the Payload Hazardous Servicing Facility. But the job of keeping it clean is far from over.
TESS has really strict contamination control requirements. So what we've done is created a clean enclosure inside the high bay that acts like a clean room within a clean room, basically.
This is a unique mission full of first-time events that are sure to be a challenge.
TESS isn't like another mission. We haven't done another TESS. This is the first of its kind.
The time has come for this diverse team to put years of planning into practice as they begin the countdown to T0.
We've had a period of hard work that lasted for years, and when we finally get to the point of launch, it's very exciting. This is where the fun begins after we've gotten through all the early legwork and the planning, that we are actually going to now prepare a spacecraft for launch.
Building on the groundbreaking discoveries of the Kepler mission, TESS has scientists across the world excited about its possibilities.
TESS is probably one of the most interesting spacecrafts that I've ever worked on in my career, because of the science it's bringing back down to Earth. It's taking science fiction to science fact.
TESS will use the transit method to hunt for the telltale signs of planets orbiting other stars. In the transit method, the spacecraft watches the sky, and when a planet passes in front of a star, the star's light briefly dims. But Kepler only looked at one portion of the sky. TESS is taking this search to a whole new level.
What TESS is going to do is look around the entire sky around us to find stars nearby, much closer, 10 times closer than Kepler.
The really exciting part about this is it's the first all-sky survey of this type, using the transiting method to look for Earth-sized and super-Earth planets.
I think the real interest by the public in exoplanets is that everyone has a dream that there's an Earth analog out there, another planet that has the ability to have an atmosphere and water and sustain life on it. That, of course, is the ultimate sort of goal of exoplanet science.
When all the pre-launch tests, inspections, cleaning, and checkouts are done, it's time for TESS to join up with its launch vehicle, the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. This is a critical process, and it begins with encapsulation. This is the Falcon 9 payload fairing. Its smooth aerodynamic profile will give TESS a safe ride through the extreme heat and pressure of the climb to space. The vehicle systems engineer in NASA's Launch Services Program plays a critical role in bringing the spacecraft and rocket together.
We have our hands in just about everything. We have to know enough about each system to know how they all interact together, and we have to know how the vehicle operates as a whole. So that's how critical the vehicle system engineer is in this whole process. We've been working very closely with SpaceX from the start, even when during their design phase and going through the whole certification process, the vehicle system engineer was integral in that role to understand what's going on with the SpaceX launch vehicle and how the NASA team can supplement a lot of what's going on.
The fairing is in one piece as it arrives at the door to the high bay. Inside, the TESS spacecraft is ready and waiting for encapsulation.
What's exciting about encapsulation is it's one of the last few things we do to prepare the spacecraft to get ready to go on the launch vehicle. It's exciting because you know we're going to be launching in a few days, which is the most exciting part of working this mission for the past couple of years.
TESS has to be ready for prime time when it gets into orbit, which means the last of its covers used during processing have to come off. Once TESS is inside the fairing, it won't be seen again on Earth. The payload fairing has been opened into two halves, and they're positioned on either side of TESS. The spacecraft is surrounded. Slowly and carefully, the fairings are moved into position until TESS is locked inside.
The encapsulation has just been completed. Right now they're getting ready to lift the spacecraft, the encapsulated spacecraft, onto the trailer, which they'll then transport to the launch site. And from there, they'll make the encapsulated spacecraft to the launch vehicle, and that point, that's the last major thing before we get ready to launch, and that is exciting.
A specialized transporter rolls into the processing facility's high bay. It's here to take the payload fairing and its precious cargo to be attached to the Falcon 9 rocket. Getting TESS to this point was no small feat. It took several teams working closely together to ensure every system and every piece of hardware are ready for this mission. With the crane doing the heavy lifting, the fairing rises off the floor. It's guided toward the transporter, with team members helping every inch of the way. The fairing must be attached securely to the transporter for the final miles of its journey on Earth. There is no margin for error. The Falcon 9 rocket is waiting.
The Falcon 9 for the TESS mission is a new launch vehicle. We are planning to recover the first stage from the TESS mission on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. If successful, this will be the 24th successful booster landing for SpaceX. By recovering first stages, not only do we understand more about our launch vehicle, it also enables us to reuse and refly that hardware, which is a key part of the SpaceX mission.
The fully assembled Falcon 9 rocket, with TESS on board, rolls out of the hangar at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Its final stop, the launch pad.
The SpaceX team is really proud to be part of such a cool mission, the TESS mission. The TESS satellite is looking for planets outside of our solar system in our galaxy, which aligns very well with the SpaceX vision to make life multiplanetary. To prepare for the rocket to be vertical on the pad today, the engineering team in the hangar did those final last checks. We mated the fairing to the rocket, and once the launch vehicle was finally checked out, the rocket rolled out of the hangar late last night and went vertical early this morning.
TESS is healthy. The Falcon 9 rocket stands ready. It's time for the final countdown.
So launch day is a pretty incredible day. Those last few minutes, you're just holding your breath. You find yourself holding your breath until, you get that T0 count. I lead a team of LSP engineers to successfully launch our spacecraft into orbit.
The SpaceX team has partnered with the NASA Launch Services Program, NASA Goddard, Orbital ATK, and MIT to enable that planet-finding mission.
We go on console about maybe 3.5 to 4 hours prior to launch. We do our voice checks to make sure we can activate and we have all the voice channels that we need to listen. We're listening to at any one point in time, maybe 6, 7 voice channels at the same time, so you're kind of training your ears to listen for your call sign. The team has a great responsibility to be able to look at all this data and say, yes, we are go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
Falcon 9's in startup. Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. The SpaceX Falcon 9 carrying test.
Status check to proceed with terminal count.
There is a moment at the start of every mission when everything comes together. A moment when years of preparation and planning are put to the test.
Clear to proceed.
There are no second chances.
You have permission to launch.
Success or failure is just a heartbeat away.
Rock report range status. Range green.
A spacecraft and its rocket on the pad, fully fueled and ready to launch.
Status check. Go Atlas. Go Centaur.
In that moment, a controlled explosion is released with such intense power it can propel a spacecraft off the Earth and into space for the benefit of all. We call this moment T0. This is its story. NASA is about to do something we've never done before. Nestled along the mountains on California's central coast is a little talked about space launch center known as Vandenberg Air Force Base. From here, history is about to be made.
This is the first time we've had an interplanetary launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. The cool thing about this launch is that we've got such a capable rocket, the Atlas V, we don't have to launch from Florida.
InSight is going to be the first time we've had a spacecraft leave Earth's orbit launching from California. We've actually done studies for it, even up to decades ago, but it just comes down to whether or not the mission had extra propellant left over and whether there was an operational reason to switch from an East Coast launch to a West Coast. This is just the first time all of it came together.
What we're going to do is we're going to unload the spacecraft really, really carefully, and then we're going to drive it a couple of miles to the Astrotech facility where they have a clean room all set up for us. We've got about 2 months here. All we got to do is clean it up, test it out, put the fuel in the tanks, and bolt it on the rocket, and off we go to Mars.
InSight is NASA's next groundbreaking mission, literally designed to break ground on Mars. Using probes and seismometers, InSight will listen for Mars quakes and measure how much heat the planet's interior gives off. If we're going to truly understand how rocky planets like Mars and Earth were created, we need to look inside.
It's unlike other missions that we've done to Mars. We have a number of orbiters, a number of landers that we've successfully explored this amazing planet. But this actually is the first mission where we're really looking on the inside, the inner space of Mars.
Sending a science mission to the Red Planet is never easy. Landing a probe on the surface is even harder. To accomplish this, InSight will have to shed its many components in a matter of minutes, bit by bit, like peeling an orange, until only the lander is left.
So the cruise stage itself is the critical component that actually gets us to Mars. There's an aeroshell that absorbs the heat as we re-enter the atmosphere. That aeroshell enables us to go through the atmosphere of Mars successfully without getting the inside, the lander itself, too hot. We deploy a parachute. That parachute does two things. It really ensures the stability of the aeroshell as it's starting to get closer to the surface. It also slows down the spacecraft further until finally we drop out of the combination backshell and parachute, and then we do a propulsive descent down to the surface.
We know water exists on Mars, and where there's water, there could be signs of life. But we must ensure any organisms we discover weren't simply stowaways from Earth. This is where the Planetary Protection Team comes into play.
Planetary protection is what we do to responsibly explore other planets and moons in our solar system. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we send a clean spacecraft there. We would hate to get to another planet or moon and think we discovered life, but it was actually something that we brought with us. So we collect our samples on InSight, any part of InSight that's going to land on the surface of Mars. We bring it back to our lab and we process it using a NASA procedure. If we run into a situation where we take a sample and it comes back as having a higher number of bacteria than what we want, then we make sure that the engineers go back and clean those surfaces with the whole idea that we don't want to cloud our ability to potentially find life on another planet or moon.
Lockheed Martin Space of Denver, Colorado, built InSight with an extremely efficient design, streamlining what needs to be done at the launch site. They shipped the spacecraft to Vandenberg with no assembly required. Simply check it out, fuel it, test it, encapsulate it, and it's ready for launch.
The processing for our spacecraft has been very smooth. A lot of the processing had to do with fueling the spacecraft, removing some remove before flight items. Everything else was pretty much already installed on the spacecraft in Denver, Colorado before it was shipped here. And that's called a ship and shoot, which means there's not too much to do except for to fuel the vehicle and do some last-minute power-on checkouts of the onboard computers and subsystems.
These preparations are crucial. Everything must be working perfectly before InSight leaves Earth. This effort is designed to ensure a safe arrival and landing following the 6-month trip from Earth to Mars. In the meantime, United Launch Alliance, or ULA, is busy at their launch pad, Slick 3, assembling the world's most successful rocket, the Atlas V.
Well, I mean, we're building a rocket. What's not exciting about that? And really excited to be able to launch the first planetary mission from the West Coast.
First, ULA stacks their Atlas V booster onto the launch platform. Atlas V is powered by the mighty RD-180 rocket engine. The RD-180 is a powerhouse, burning highly refined kerosene known as RP-1 and liquid oxygen for thrust. For this mission, the RD-180 has more than enough power to get InSight off of Earth and heading towards Mars. When the booster's fuel is spent, the Centaur second stage kicks in and finishes the job. Centaur won't actually hit Mars. It will fly just past it. Final course corrections will be done by InSight itself to enter the Martian atmosphere and land on the surface. Once fueling and testing is complete, the team from United Launch Alliance will encapsulate InSight inside its payload fairing, the shell that keeps InSight clean and safe during its dangerous ascent through Earth's atmosphere.
We're at the phase of the mission where we're encapsulating with the launch vehicle, and the ULA team with their fairings now come in and they take the two halves of the fairings and they make a clamshell around the spacecraft to help protect it for the environments that we see during launch. And we do that because as we leave the Earth's atmosphere, the air and the molecules in the atmosphere would tear up our spacecraft otherwise, and the fairing is there to protect us.
With InSight encapsulated in its fairing, it's time to move the payload out to Slick 3. But this California coastline comes with its own set of challenges. The surrounding marine layer can swallow up a launch pad, reducing visibility to under a couple hundred feet.
So right now, it's on the transport vehicle and it's ready to roll.
and we'll be rolling out around 2 a.m. At that point, we'll have a convoy that drives very slowly from the payload processing facility out to the SLIG 3 Atlas V facility. And once it arrives, we'll hoist the encapsulated spacecraft up to the top of the mobile service tower and place it on the launch vehicle.
This morning when it was sitting on the truck and they put the crane on it, they started to lift it up. That's the last time this spacecraft's ever going to feel the ground of Earth. I'm just kind of jumping out of my skin. This is so exciting. We're getting so close to launch, and it's been a long, long road for me. This has been a challenging program. I mean, we've had a lot of technical issues to overcome. We actually had to stand down back in 2015, but since then we've gotten it all together, and things have been going so smoothly the last year. We really feel really confident about this launch now. We got it on top of the rocket. We're going to blast it off in just a few days, and when it gets to Mars and lands, finally it'll have solid ground under its feet again and get to work on probing the depths of Mars.
But InSight won't be traveling alone. Hitching a ride to the Red Planet are a pair of CubeSats, twin satellites called Marco A and Marco B.
So Marco is a dual payload riding as a secondary mission on its way to Mars.
So Marco is a pair of CubeSats, and CubeSats are really small spacecraft. They're essentially the size of a large cereal box, so about this big.
It's going to be relaying telemetry from the entry, descent, and landing of InSight back to Earth in near real time. After InSight is deployed on orbit and is heading to Mars, Centaur, which is behind me, ejects Marco A into orbit, and it'll slowly rotate itself so that Marco B ejects 180 degrees on the other side of the vehicle.
But Marco is a technology demonstration mission. It's actually one of the smallest spacecraft we've ever launched to interplanetary space. It's the first interplanetary CubeSat. So in of itself, it has all of these technology that we've never tested in deep space before. So if Marco works this time, one of the cool things that we could do is actually replicate that system and fly it with other missions in the future. And whether you're going to Mars or Venus or maybe even further away to an asteroid, you could think of it as bring your own telecom relay.
So everything went well today with the lift of the spacecraft and mate onto the rocket. It started off very foggy and windy, and right now it's a beautiful day, just typical California weather. And now we're ready to go to Mars.
But just as twilight falls across the base, the fog returns, cloaking the coast with a bone-chilling mist that will last until daybreak.
As we get closer to T0 liftoff time, a number of activities have to happen. There's a mobile service tower around the Atlas V rocket, and the InSight spacecraft is on top of the rocket, enclosed in the payload fairing. So we're going to back that mobile service tower away from the rocket to leave it exposed just beside the umbilical tower.
Stand engineer, proceed with MST roll to park position. Roger. MST boards shall be closed in park position. Roger.
The final launch pad preparation is underway. Once the mobile service tower is rolled back, InSight and Atlas V are just hours away from T0. Basking in the searchlights of the West Coast facility, they are presented with the glamour of a Hollywood premiere, fitting treatment for such an historical mission.
So there's a lot of excitement within the NASA launch team about the InSight mission. First time we're going to launch from the California coast, going to Mars. And what is really exciting to the team is this is the culmination of a lot of work. The teams have been working on this mission for over 5 years, and today is the day that they will see all of their hard work rewarded.
Status check to proceed with terminal count. Atlas systems. Propulsion.
Go.
Hydraulics.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems. Propulsion. Go. Pneumatics. Go. LH2.
Go.
Facility. Go. Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Launch director.
LC, you have permission to launch. Go Atlas. Go Centaur.
Go InSight. Proceeding with the count.
We're at T-minus 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 0. And liftoff of the Atlas V. launching the first interplanetary mission from the West Coast, and NASA's InSight, the first outer space robotic explorer to study the interior of Mars.
Seconds after liftoff, the rocket punches through the marine layer, lighting the night sky for miles, visible all the way down to Los Angeles. An infrared camera showing the long tail of the exhaust plume captures some of the ascent, as well as an onboard ascent camera.
And we're nearing booster engine cutoff, or BECO.
Back to 4.6 Gs in preparation for BECO. Boost phase cooldown has completed. And we have BECO. Shutdown looks good. Stage separation. We have box and fuel pre-start. GN2 purge firing. The RCS is underway. We have ignition and full thrust. And we have indication of payload fairing jettison. Looks like a good step.
And the payload fairing that was encapsulating the InSight spacecraft has been jettisoned. The RL-10C engine, the second stage of the Centaur, continues to burn.
An hour and 28 minutes into the mission, the InSight spacecraft and the Marco twins are deployed from the Centaur upper stage, beginning the long voyage to Mars, where InSight will go to work shedding light on secrets hidden in the depths of the Red Planet.
Advanced Air Mobility, or AAM, is this vision of a new mode of transportation that will enable the safe and efficient movement of people and cargo by air to and from locations that are currently only accessed by road. One area the NASA team is researching is passenger ride quality. NASA's Advanced Air Mobility mission is researching what ride quality could be like for passengers traveling in eVTOL aircraft to make sure it'll be a smooth and safe ride. The idea is to conduct research on human subjects by studying their physiological response to the types of low-frequency motion, vibration, and noise stimuli that we expect AAM passengers will experience. We believe AAM aircraft will need to be designed smartly. They will need to be conducive to low cabin noise and low vibration from the rotors. They will need to be more resistant to being upset by turbulence. And they will need to be operated or flown in a predictable, repeatable, non-aggressive manner that will not result in large accelerations or sudden accelerations or rotations of the aircraft. It's really exciting to see the amount of innovation that is going on in the aerospace industry. It is truly a fascinating experience to see all these new designs come forth.
We're never going to stop exploring the unknown in air and space. We're not going to stop innovating for the benefit of humanity and inspiring the world through discovery. 22 will go down in the history books as one of the most accomplished years all of NASA's history and missions. The golden age of space exploration. So much to look forward to in 23. Climate missions that will tell us about how our Earth is changing. Game-changing aeronautics developments with the 59 and the X-57, and the selection of the first astronauts to go to the moon in more than 50 years. And there's a lot more coming. There was a philosopher, a historian, someone who had a great grasp of the future named Carl Sagan.
In Midwestern U.S. averages more than 850 tornadoes each year, and lately the number of floods has been rising in the region too. So chances are there will be more twisters and floods near here again. And between school, sports, and social lives, chances are you won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids has all the educational tools and information to make the conversation easy. When the time comes, chances are they'll feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
Hello, my name is Emma McAndrews, and this is an OU Nightly Sports Brief. Oklahoma proved they are the gold standard in women's gymnastics and are your 2023 national champions. OU won their 6th title on Saturday in Fort Worth, defeating Florida, LSU, and Utah. They posted a 198.3875 that tied for their highest score at the NCAA championships. OU's women's tennis team clinched a share of the Big 12 regular season title on Sunday. They share the honor with Texas after dominating Kansas 4-2. The number 16 Sooners travel to Kansas to compete in the Big 12 championships that begin on April 20th. Sooner baseball put a cherry on top of their weekend run, ruling Texas Tech Sunday evening. Jackson Nicholas and Bryce Madron hit a combined 3 home runs to beat the Red Raiders 12-2. OU travels to Stillwater for a Bedlam matchup on Tuesday. This has been an OU Nightly Sports Brief. I am Emma McAndrews. Good night.
And we're live now with some really big news from Hubble. And here to tell us more about it, we have Dr. Jane Rigby with us, and she's a co-author of the result that we're going to be talking about, and also the operations project scientist for the recently launched James Webb Space Telescope. And we also have with us Dr. Patty Boyd, who previously worked as the Deputy Operations Project Scientist for Hubble and now works as the Chief of NASA's Exoplanets and Stellar Astrophysics Laboratory. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to hear about this Hubble news. And for anyone watching live, if you have questions during the stream, please feel free to comment them, and we're going to do our best to get to some at the end of the show. But for now, I think we should just jump right in. So, Patty, it sounds like Hubble just broke a pretty impressive record. Could you tell us what Hubble discovered?
Sure, I would love to. And it's really exciting to talk about this record-setting star. So, like so many other discoveries from Hubble, it starts with an image, a very beautiful image. And one of the first things that you can see in that image are galaxies. And those galaxies are actually gravitationally bound in a cluster. Those are fascinating objects in the universe. They have a huge amount of mass. And what's very special about this particular image, in addition to that beautiful cluster of galaxies, is it actually contains an image of a single star whose light left that object when the universe itself was less than 1 billion years old. So this is a rare event, and we're really excited to learn more about this object.
Yeah, that sounds super exciting. And just as a refresher for everyone, Hubble has been orbiting Earth for almost 32 years and is still generating incredible science like we just heard about. So Patty, could you also tell us just what can astronomers learn about our universe by examining this star?
So when we look at the stars in our own neighborhood, like when you look up at the night sky, those stars are in our Milky Way galaxy. They're in the same galaxy that we're in. We're a star, one of 100 billion or more in the Milky Way. And those stars evolved a lot like we did in this same Milky Way galaxy. And they're about, thousands of light years away from us when we look at them. So the light that from those stars is coming to us thousands of years later. When we're looking at this star called Earendel, we're looking at the universe itself when it was like in its first billion years. We're at 3.8 billion years now. The universe has changed a lot in that time. So Earendel is this rare window when we can actually look back and see how stars were working in those very early days of the universe.
Wow, that's very interesting. Thank you. And another cool part about this observation is that it was only possible because of an astrophysical phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. So Jane, can you kind of break down for us like what gravitational lensing is?
Sure. So we can see the star, even though we're looking back so far in time, because of two things. One, the speed of light's not that fast, right? So we're able, as Patty was saying, we look back in space to look back in time. And the other is this phenomenon of gravitational lensing, which is just the fact predicted by Einstein that mass bends space. And so light is traveling through a curved space-time, and so it acts like mass is bending light, gravity is bending light. Well, if you think about it, what happens when you're bending light? Well, eyeglasses are bending light, right? They're getting the light to change where it shows up in your eyeball so you can see better. So it turns out that this phenomenon of gravitational lensing, when you get big concentrations of mass, either a galaxy or better yet, a cluster of galaxies together, they can act like a cosmic telescope and bend the light, focus it toward, accidentally, toward us. And so this is a really rare phenomenon. About maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 galaxies are gravitationally lensed. But when this happens, we can take advantage of these cosmic telescopes and then observe them with our human-built telescopes to see way farther than we normally can. And those background galaxies, they're way behind the cluster. They don't have anything to do with the cluster. We see them not only much brighter than they really are, but stretched and magnified, kind of like they're in a funhouse mirror. And that lets us study them in greater detail than we normally can with our current telescopes.
Okay, gotcha. That's really cool. And so another thing I'm wondering, like, how did astronomers, when they were making this observation, know that Earendel was an individual star rather than a bigger cosmic object?
Sure. So this is a cool case where this is a discovery that was half on purpose, half, oh wow, that's cool, which is how a lot of science works. So the cluster and the lens galaxy were found in 2016 by Dan Coe and collaborators. And so they found the arc and said, okay, that's a very high redshift arc, redshift 6, a lens galaxy at redshift 6, about 1 billion years after the Big Bang is how we see it. And so, and then Brian Welch, a graduate student at Johns Hopkins, was given the task of modeling this thing and doing the lens model of where's all the mass in the cluster and getting that to reproduce the distorted shapes that we see of the lens galaxies. And as he was doing this, there's this dot in the middle of the lens galaxy. And try as he could, that dot had to be really small in all the models, like super small, like the size of our solar system. And the magnification had to be really high, like thousands. And so the most obvious explanation is that we're seeing either one star or maybe a couple stars, but it's not like a big star cluster, but we're seeing down to the scales of individual star or multiple stars all the way out 1 billion years after the Big Bang.
Okay, wow. And speaking of, this star being within the first 1 billion years of the Big Bang, Patty, how did astronomers know that about this star? How did they know it was in there?
That's a great question. And so, like many of the images that Hubble takes of these fields, these treasury fields, we're observing them to collect as much data as not only the team wants to get the science that they want to get out, but that the entire community can really mine that rich archive and get a lot of science out. So one of the ways you can get the most science out of an image like this is to observe it in multiple filters. And the filters are basically different colors of light. So they specify a certain range of colors. And so this is a multicolor image using 2 instruments on the telescope. And what that allows us to do is, for the galaxies, each galaxy is going to have a certain brightness in those filters. And we can look at how that brightness changes as a function of our filter. And what we see with these objects that are very far, they're redshifted. We call it redshifted. As they move further from us, the whole universe is actually expanding. The light gets shifted into the red. And what that will do to a galaxy's spectrum that's far redshifted is it'll actually kind of block it out in the optical. You won't see the light there. It'll just start to peak out the redder and redder that filter gets. So if you notice in the image that smear that we're looking at, the sunrise arc it's called, it's very red compared to the rest of the image. And that's why, is the light's just starting to pick up as we go redder. And you can use that to estimate its redshift. And that is exactly how the objects in that arc are estimated. They're all at about the same redshift of 6.2. And you use that number and the photometric information that you have to estimate everything else. Its distance and then its size scale is related to that. So there's just a tremendous amount of scientific information in these multicolor images, in addition to just the beauty of looking at the galaxies that are in them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Patty, also, why is it important to be studying this star that is within the first 1 billion years of the Big Bang?
So when we look around at our local universe or the stars in our own galaxy, we get a picture of how the universe has evolved. And one of the coolest stories about that is where matter came from, where the heavy elements came from, where the carbon, calcium, oxygen that makes up everything, our bodies, our bones, our telescopes, where did those elements come from? And the answer is that they're fused in the centers, in the cores of stars. And massive stars in particular are very efficient at this. They fuse lower elements like hydrogen and helium into heavier elements, and then they explode in supernova explosions, and they spew that material out into their local environment so the next generation of stars can pull that in as they're forming. Those are the kind of things that form rocky planets like the Earth, where we've got like an iron core and all those elements in our atmospheres. Those were fused in earlier generations of stars. So Earendel is this single star, the farthest yet that we've been able to observe, and it will allow us to see how that process started to be put together in the very earliest days. When did those very early heavy elements start to be infused into the material? And it's just a window that's opening up onto, you know, the next big thing, because that light is pushed so far into the red that we need a telescope that can go even further into the red than Hubble can to really uncover the cool things.
Yeah, and speaking of, I think another fantastic part about all of this is that there's already approved observations to look at Earendel with the recently launched James Webb Space Telescope, which is a super powerful infrared space telescope that just launched in December. We're so excited for it to begin science operations this summer. And Jane, could you kind of tell us how Webb might bring this Hubble discovery even farther?
Sure. So I learned about this lens star when the discoverers came to me, said, so do you want to be, we're trying to figure out how to plan some Webb observations. Are you in? I'm like, oh, I'm totally in. That's cool. So what we worked out was a set of observations with NIRCam, which is the near-infrared imager, to get colors in all of those filters that are too red for Hubble to do well, right, or to do at all, right? And so Webb will pick up where Hubble left off, getting redder filters. So we'll have very crisp, gorgeous images. We've already proven with Webb that we can take gorgeous images. It's as a very, very sharp telescope. And now we're getting the science instruments ready to go. The second science instrument that we will target for this galaxy and star is NIRSPEC, the near-infrared spectrograph. And so we'll be taking spectra of not only the lensed galaxy, the sunrise arc, but also the star Earendel. And so the NIRSPEC has a lot of cool bells and whistles. One of them is it has this microshutter array that has 250,000 doors that can open and close magnetically. And so we'll open up doors, we'll close most of them so we don't get the brightness of the sky in the way. And then we'll just open some doors for the lens galaxy and for Earendel the star. And we'll be getting spectra, right, with a little prism to tell us about what's inside of what's inside that galaxy. What is the temperature of that star? How bright is it really? How, as Patty was talking about, how much of the heavier elements that were made in stars are in this galaxy versus just the boring hydrogen and helium that's made in the Big Bang?
Okay, gotcha. And so more broadly speaking, why is it important that both Hubble and Webb are going to be operating at the same time?
Sure, so Hubble and Webb are really complementary. They're not really in competition. When we built Webb, we knew full well there was a Hubble up there doing great stuff, and we didn't try to replicate that functionality. So it's really like players in a band. Like, you know, your drummer and your keyboardist are doing different things. And so you select them for different skills. So Webb is really designed to do the things that Hubble can't. It has much greater spectroscopic capabilities than Hubble, so we can really see what the universe is made of, which is great because that's part of what my research is. I love spectroscopy. What's stuff made of? And then the other part is that we're operating in the